So from a financial perspective, I would say your co-op performed quite well in 2020 amidst all the uncertainty and all things considered, really the result of a lot of great work from your staff, the management, and really just tremendous community support. So sales were up nearly 3%, certainly a meaningful shift in the business with a significant drop in areas like prepared foods and wellness, and upticks in other areas. And the way the business operated changed quite a bit, with daily traffic or daily customers down nearly 1/3 for most of this kind of pandemic period. But then each basket sold was meaningfully larger than historical levels prior to the pandemic kicking in. Margins held up well overall across the year. Some fits and starts and a lot of adjustments along the way, but the business continued to generate a profit and thus was in a position to make a patronage dividend despite increased costs, across employee hero pay adjustments, significant increases in safety costs, safety protocol costs, and just general business disruptions. We did and were eligible for the Federal CARES Act program, and we utilized that to the full extent we were eligible. And that really helped to cover these increased costs that the business faced. And it put us in a position to not only take care of our core needs, but to continue to invest in the business and pursue a mix of initiatives, which you'll hear more about later in today's presentation. Like to preach, it's wonderful to have a fortress balance sheet. The way I like to describe it, provides a lot of flexibility and cushion for uncertainties on the horizon. So long-term debt remains at zero. Cash and investment balance is nearly $7 million. A significant figure, but also an amount that was built over many years. So just a interesting statistic, in fact, is the retained earnings cumulatively over the last about 18 years have added up to about $5 million in total. And then over that same time period, the patronage dividend was nearly the same amount. So over that 18 plus year period, we've kind of matched those figures. And it's really put the co-op in, just again, terrific position to weather future disruptions and uncertainty, and then also continue to position us to pursue strategic initiatives such as expansion and other investments in the business. So this graphic just kind of depicts what I had mentioned over the last 20 plus years. You see that, and the blue line tracks the cumulative patronage dividends that have been paid out to members over that time period, and it pretty much matches what's been retained to continue to build and position the business. You see a little bit of an adjustment in more recent years where more earnings were retained to build up a balance to pursue eventual expansion initiatives in particular. Sales graph, the blue bars depict actual dollar sales over the last, since 2009. And then you see in the green bar graph that just tracks year-over-year growth in sales. So you see a little bit of a dip in kind of that 2016, 2018 period that was, related to Safeway kind of adjusting, closing down, and then reopening. And as the business adjusted to that and kind of came back to kind of tracking at anywhere from 2 to 3% annual sales growth, which, in some ways just kind of tracks inflation largely. And, this might suggest that at this stage, the business is maybe kind of capped by just the capacity of the store and the footprint. So sales could be constrained by our existing footprint, and again, part of the motivation to continue to look at expansion alternatives. So this is a bit of a busy graph and page, but the intention is to outline two key elements. So in the pie chart on the left, you see where a dollar of sales revenue goes, or the components of that. So, cost of goods sold makes up about nearly 63% of each dollar of revenue. And people basically make up almost 24% of that amount. And when you think about those cost elements, that's also a terrific positive in many ways, because a lot of that money just gets recycled and pushed back into our community and into the Valley. So view that generally as a positive dynamic. The other costs kind of add up, across admin, operating, occupancy, member discounts, and other components, which often leave us with a net income on balance of somewhere between 2.5% to 3% in recent times. And then it's that amount that the board assesses to judge payout of patronage dividend and then the retained earnings. So it's in this bit of an unusual year we've got in 2020, where reported net income was actually 7.6%. And you can see the components we've broken out here. The 2.8% is really what the business itself generated and the actual store sales contributed to. And then that 4.8% component of the overall 7.6% is really related to the one-time CARES Act federal program benefit we received. And the way that technical program loan was forgiven last year, which was kind of the design and the expectation around that program. And as that loan was forgiven, from an accounting perspective, that those proceeds are taken into net income. So it throws the number and the reporting off a little bit this year. But again, getting back to just how the patronage dividend is determined, of that net income that's generated each year, the board reviews the portion that's to be distributed as a dividend, and then the portion that's to be retained for future investment or strategic needs. For 2020, the 2.8% from income from operations or from actual store sales, the board and your co-op felt that it was again appropriate to return 100% of that amount. And the dollar figure of that 2.8% is $476,000. So the decision was to return all of that in the form of owner dividends. And then while also continuing to use some of those CARES Act benefits to build the reserves of the co-op. And just a bit of a reminder, last year in 2019, patronage dividends were also paid out at 100%, given what was going on with the pandemic and the Alameda fire. And that was a $630,000 dividend return to members. Owners should have now received their email that outlines their patronage dividend amount, and those amounts are on the register and able to be used by members at this point. So from a financial perspective, your co-ops navigated this challenging year really well through a lot of hard work and effort. And I would say remains in a very strong position to weather unforeseen new challenges and continue to build on the mission and invest in its future opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. And again, if you have any questions regarding anything that Mark presented, please put them in the chat and we'll address those at the end of the meeting. We're going to ask Emil Amaratico, our general manager now, to give us some of the highlights of this past year. So Emil, please.
Thank you, Ed. Before I get started, could I just check in our guests, Richard, Peggy, and Hideko? Can each of you please enter your owner numbers in the chat so that our administrator can capture those? If you'd rather unmute and share those numbers before I get started, that would be fine as well. Do you have any questions? All right, let me get started. I've got two areas that I'd like to cover. One is just a recap of the the very high points of this last year of pandemic, and absolutely created both challenges that in some cases turned into opportunities for us. And then, as Ed said, I'd like to share with you a couple of our key initiatives and where we are with those. First of all, let's recap the challenges. There's something new we'd never seen before in grocery, and that is that, except maybe in inner city New York, where you have those plexiglass sheets between cashiers and customers, but we'd never seen them at the co-op before. And that was about the first visible sign that something was happening. And so much of our focus in the last year had been to protecting both employees and owners. The stress of our predicament weighed on everyone, and folks responded differently across the spectrum. So the keys were to protect folks from what we believed to be airborne virus that could easily be transmitted. And then we also believed that they could be transmitted via surface contact. So we doubled down on sanitizing everything in the store routinely, as well as making sanitation tools available to shoppers for their carts, for their hands, gloves, etc. One real concern that we had was if an employee were positive with COVID, we had to trace who they were in contact with for greater than 15 minutes within 6 feet. And as you can imagine, with 170 employees, that could have really been a game changer in terms of staffing. And we were very, very fortunate that we had very few incidents. I think in total, we may have had 4 employees test positive, and the result was very minimal quarantining. But right about Thanksgiving, we did experience a number of employees that had to be out, and it really impacted the team. So we were very lucky. Impediments to shopping, things like metering the number of customers in the store and one-way aisles and so forth, really kind of changed the face of grocery as we knew it. As many of you recall, there was a series of events. First of all, the hoarding right before the impending shutdown or lockdown, with everybody staying home, and really cleared our shelves. I probably should have shown a photo here of our shelves toward the end of that couple of weeks, and it looked much more like a Soviet era grocery store with nothing on the shelves in some cases. And then the result, it took several months for our vendors, for our suppliers to dig out and restock everybody. So we were out of stock in many items for quite some time. We also, of course, experienced a huge drop in our prepared food sales. Everybody was afraid of prepared food, and we're preparing food at home. So we really experienced some significant drops there. One positive for us was that our hot and cold food bars could be served, could be closed off with plexiglass and served by our staff behind the line to order. Many co-ops, as you know, have, and grocery stores have islands with hot and cold bars that were shut down completely. So our sales have or did start to recover. I think at a low, we may have hit 60% down, but then settled in at 40 and then back to 20 in early this year. And now we're about even with last year. Many co-ops still have not come back. Bulk foods, because of the concern for contamination and handling, we started packaging, and that took an awful lot of labor to package all of those bulk foods and make them available. Another big impact, and one that Rihanna may speak to, is suddenly all of our efforts to provide every reusable container and avenue that we could were reversed. We had to supply shopping bags to everybody, clean plastic bags, brand new plastic bags for all. Couldn't allow people to bring in their own containers. So overnight, our waste stream grew tremendously. And then unexpectedly, of course, late last summer, the Alameda fire impacted at least 8 of our employees who lost homes and many others who were displaced for several days, if not longer. And getting them back in the workplace and their families safe was fairly traumatic for all of us. And then finally, a lingering result of all of this is there is absolutely almost zero applicant flow these days. And it's not just us, and it's not just the fire impact, but nationally, we are having real trouble hiring new staff. And I would say at the moment, we're down 10 to 15 positions and don't see when there's relief in sight. Flipping the page to opportunities, I mentioned one of them, and that is that we've been able to provide a very high level of service with serving customers at the hot, cold, and soup bars. Many of our customers have said, please don't go back, that we really appreciate that. And then there are others that say the line is too long and we wish we could just get in and serve ourselves. So not sure what the answer will be there, but I don't think that self-serve is coming back too soon. Another unexpected benefit was shopper traffic was down considerably, so that provided relief to our parking issue for the first time in probably a decade or more. Something I think we're all very proud of is that we maintained full employment. There were many positions. I mentioned the prepared foods department. Their volume dropped to such an extent that if we hadn't either repositioned some of those employees and some of the other departments, for instance, the marketing and education department, those folks were all kind of reassigned to other duties, and we were able to maintain full employment. So nobody was put out on furlough. We also offered all employees for over a year now, $2 per hour hero pay for becoming essential workers overnight to in part compensate for some of the additional stress that we were all experiencing. We also made employee shift meals available, a $5 credit in the prepared foods area, which was experiencing sales decline. So they had capacity to feed, and our break room went from high occupancy to, I think, 3 people at a time. So it was very difficult for staff to bring food from home, prepare it for all of us to get through that area. So by making meals available through the prepared foods department, we took some of that stress off of our employees. We also provided all kinds of covered time off for family care, parental, as well as other family care, allowing folks to take time as necessary without jeopardizing their jobs. We also, this is just about at the end of or soon after the hoarding episode, we were all frazzled. And for the first time in co-op history that I'm aware of, we closed for the Easter holiday. I think the governor was suggesting that everybody stay home for that holiday. And we took that to heart and closed the store for a day and gave all of our employees an extra day's paid holiday, and just to rest and breathe and spend time with their families. And then I mentioned that our employee fire victims, we provided some financial assistance to many of them, both in the form of gift cards to use at the co-op for replacing lost food, as well as a financial stipend to their GoFundMe pages. And then lastly, a very unexpected development. It's been on the back burner for a couple of years, and that was to explore e-grocery. And because of the pandemic, that was accelerated significantly. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. I'd like to switch now to the strategic initiatives. And the 4 that really rose to the fore in this last year were A, securing a favorable site to expand our store, which has been on the board for over a decade, preparing for climate change and addressing some of the impacts of climate change, and then assessing the viability of e-grocery and delivery, which I just mentioned. And then, as Ed mentioned earlier, a key new initiative for us is really advancing our experience in the co-op of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'll address the first three, and then we'll look to Camila and Julie, who will be sharing some of the details of our ED&I experience. So starting with the favorable site to expand our store, that's a Google Earth shot of both the co-op and our neighbor, the Umpqua Bank property. Our current campus is just about 1.5 acres, 1.4 acres. And if we can add the Umpqua property at 0.8, we would have over 2 acres, quite a bit more parking, and a lot more capacity for expansion. So thinking about proceeding there, we are actively negotiating for that property at this time. This conversation has been going on for years, and it's ebbed and flowed, and at the moment it's flowing, and we are all very hopeful that we can take it to fruition and land that property. Part of that is that we are collaborating with I'm saying a Main Street site owner, and Main Street being somewhere closer to downtown with more traffic flow, site that would really achieve a three-party win-win. The owner of the site would benefit, we would benefit by gaining the property, and Umpqua would benefit by a new contemporary store that would have much better profile downtown. We've already been through the design and received some City of Ashland, what they call the pre-application approval for a new branch. And so we believe that if we can ink the deals with the property owner and with the bank, we may be able to move forward finally. And as a result of the fire, we had been considering if and when the Umpqua deal maybe sputtered along, what other options did we have? And so thinking about a multi-store approach, where else would there be a need for a store? Well, with the Alameda fire taking out quite a bit of talent in Phoenix, it became apparent that there's great demand, or sensing that there's great demand in those areas. And so we've commissioned, along with the municipalities, the urban renewal agencies and talent in Phoenix, and some support from SOREDI, Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development, we're conducting a market study and hope to have results of that in the next week or so to indicate to us whether or not there is the potential we believe there is for another store in that market, probably somewhere in between Talent and South Medford. Preparing for climate change, I wonder if many of you recognize this beast. It is an industrial air scrubber. Air scrubber is, I guess, an industrial or a commercial term for air filter. And it's a very intensive filter that moves a high volume of air. They've been in the store now for a couple of years. The first season that we implemented them, they worked very effectively. We could see from the air quality meter that the air quality improved dramatically when these machines were utilized. However, last year, the smoke, the air quality was so poor because of the heavy smoke that these machines couldn't keep up even at full blast. And we really had to dig deep to figure out why we couldn't keep up. And we determined that the air pressure in the co-op building is negative, meaning there is more air being exhausted out of the building than there is makeup air, clean conditioned air replacing it. And so as a result, in the winter, we have cold air coming in those front doors and any other openings. We also have heat in the summer, and as I mentioned, smoke during the summer, and we were powerless to do anything about it. So the answer, the solution to this issue is to supply more fresh makeup air into the building to neutralize the pressure so that we eliminate the negative pressure sucking air in. To do that, we need to install special equipment that will both filter outside air and heat or cool it depending on the season and pump it into the building to pressurize the building. And so we're exploring that design right now. I am hopeful that for this summer, I might be able to rent or lease by the month portable equipment to do that very thing. Also want to talk a little bit about solar power. Rihanna will take us in a little more detail. We have run out of roof capacity on our campus. There's not much more to be gained by installing solar. We've got a couple of small roofs left, but we have a fairly voracious appetite for electricity in the form of refrigerators and freezers and coolers. And so the next step for us was exploring a net metering program. And we have an amazing project that Rihanna will tell you about that is answering that call. And then lastly, one of our initiatives was to assess the viability for e-grocery and delivery. And we went out of the assessment phase, and the pandemic demand folks that were concerned about their own health entering the store, the demand for either curbside or delivery rose dramatically, and we had to respond very quickly to meet that demand, as did others. An added benefit of developing the e-grocery program was that we were able to adhere to a face covering only policy in the store and not permit folks without face coverings in the store. And the most common reason people gave for not wishing to wear a face covering was that they had some medical condition, and that because of ADA, that condition needed to be permitted in the store. By providing e-grocery, that provided us with what is called an accommodation for those folks, meaning if they couldn't shop with a face covering on, we would provide free of service curbside pickup in our parking lot, and for a small fee, delivery for a $5 donation. So in 60 days, I mentioned that we had some excess capacity in our staffing because of reductions in volume in some departments. And we redeployed some of those staff, put a team together from across the organization, some very, very sharp and energetic team members, and they designed, built, and then we piloted e-grocery and delivery and had that launched within about 60 days. It was a phenomenal project, one that probably would have taken a year or two with normal project planning, but in this case, we moved quickly. We knew we could make all the mistakes we needed to and correct them along the way, and that people would be forgiving, and they were. And then we moved into delivery, and our local Rotary Club provided volunteer drivers and delivery folks to pilot that, and it turned out to be more than a pilot. They continued doing it for a period of about 6 months, during which time, at a $5 donation per delivery, they raised over $3,000, and which were donated to the Ashland Emergency Food Bank. At this time, I'd like to introduce Rihanna Koppel, our sustainability coordinator, to share some of the highlights from this last year that, despite the reusable container issue, continued to make progress. Rihanna?
Great, thank you so much, Emil.
Indeed.
Again, my name is Rihanna Koppel. I am the sustainability coordinator here at the Ashland Food Co-op. And just to give a brief overview before I get started, we are committed to 4 main goals to achieve by 2030. The first one is to be carbon neutral. The second is to be zero waste. The third is to reduce toxic chemicals. And the fourth one is to be a leader in sustainability in the community. And I really think that with all the challenges of 2020, that we've really been able to see some amazing accomplishments still over the past year. So what you're seeing here in front of you is the cover of the 2020 sustainability report that is being worked on right now and will be released hopefully by the end of the month. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I also wanted to state that we are a climate collaborative committed company. And what the Climate Collaborative is a group of many natural product companies like Dr. Bronner's, UNFI, many of the organizations and companies that we carry as products on our shelves are all committed to different elements of preparing for climate change and helping to mitigate those changes as well. So we, again, are one of those companies, which is pretty great. The second thing I'd like to highlight on here is that in 2020, we became an EPA Green Chill Partner. And what that means is that we have joined this national program to work on tracking and reducing our refrigerants. And refrigerants, as you may or may not know, are one of the largest contributors to some pretty toxic greenhouse gas emissions. And so through this free program, we'll be able to track and monitor what we're using and hopefully reduce those emissions. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about energy generation at the store. And this is really tapping into our first goal of carbon neutrality and a bit of energy efficiency as well. So at the store itself, we have 2 solar arrays. You can see one in the photo here. This is our solar panel array that's on the roof of our main store. It's one that you probably don't see often unless you're looking at Google Maps. And the second one of our solar arrays is on our barn. Together, both of those arrays produce 51 kilowatt hours of solar generation for the store. And from the electricity that we do not generate from our 2 solar panels, we purchase the rest of that, 100% of renewable energy credits from Bonneville Environmental Foundation. This is the nonprofit that is connected to Bonneville Power Administration, which is where we get our electricity from through the city of Ashland. So we purchase those RECs, renewable energy credits, and we also purchase 100% water restoration credits, those WRCs that you see there. And that helps to fund many different programs throughout the state of Oregon that help to bring water back to critically dewatered streams and rivers throughout the region. And we've been doing that for very many years now, and it's great to be a part of those programs. Currently, we are also offsetting 100% of our greenhouse gas emissions for Scope 1 and Scope 2 through these programs. And so this qualifies us as an EPA Green Power Partner, which I'm so glad that we're able to be a part of these national programs to highlight our commitment to the climate. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the big exciting news that really isn't 2020 news, kind of April 2021 news, but we figured we'd include this as a part of the presentation. We just invested in a brand new solar array at Oak Street Tank and Steel through Ashland's virtual net metering program. So you can see here, this was our ribbon cutting ceremony in the photo. There's a meal up on there. I'm up there as well. We have some folks from the Ashland Chamber of Commerce and Eric from True South Solar, which is the solar company that installed this massive array. And the array that you are seeing is actually the largest solar array in all of Southern Oregon at 197 kilowatt hours. So there's hundreds of panels up there, which is pretty cool. So you can see here in this upper pie chart on the left, before we invested in this solar array at Oak Street Tank and Steel, that little red slice is how much of our total annual electricity was generated on site from our 2 solar arrays. And that green part is how many RECs that we purchased in order to consolidate for 100% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And This new pie chart shows, you can see with this yellow slice, this is how much more of our annual energy that the Oak Street Tank and Steel solar array is able to provide. So it's estimated that it will help us generate between 33 to 35% of our total annual electricity usage, which is pretty phenomenal. That's a really big chunk of our annual electricity. And we're so excited with this program in particular. What a great partnership that this was between True South Solar, between us, Oak Street Tank and Steel, the Oregon Department of Energy, and Thomas Endicott. So it really is an incredible project that we're able to be a part of. This second part here that you'll see, also related to being carbon neutral and energy efficiency, is that we are in our third year now of enrollment in the Strategic Energy Management Program. And this is a program that is offered for free by the Energy Trust of Oregon. If you are a customer of Avista and using natural gas, which we do at the store, you can qualify for this commercial SEM program. So we're very excited, as you can see here in this graph. In our first year in 2019, we reduced our natural gas usage by 2.6%. And in 2020, we actually doubled it and reduced our natural gas usage by 5.7%. So we're really proud of this. And I think that our energy team, our energy intern, has really shown up to take a strong look at different ways operationally we can help to reduce natural gas in the store. And on the next slide here, I'm going to talk a little bit about different programs that we have accomplished through this Strategic Energy Management Program. One of the wonderful things about this free program is not only is it free, but they also offer financial incentives for hitting milestones. And so a certain number of milestones you hit per year, certain number of financial incentives. So for us, we took a look at this and we said, what do we want to invest in as a team? And one of the things that we did over the past year was invest in CleanHub. And CleanHub is a company that is based in Europe that helps to remove ocean-bound plastic from the environment in all over the world, really. In India is in particular where our project was located. But through a donation of $1,000 from our Energy Trust funds, we were able to help remove 922 pounds of plastic from the environment. And it was recycled or else repurposed and used for energy. So we really thought that because we could not have very many reusable containers throughout 2020, we had to offer single-use containers, that this was a way that even as we had to put more plastic out into the world, we could try and remove some in the same vein. One of the other things that we invested in this year were smart Nest thermostats. Our thermostats at the store, our heating, cooling of the temperatures in the store is run by natural gas HVACs. And so when we installed these thermostats throughout different parts of the store, we've been able to help create a schedule and regulate our temperature, which has helped us to reduce our dependence on natural gas. And the last thing here, you might have seen this outside of the customer exit and entry doors, is we invested in some TerraCycle boxes. And TerraCycle is a zero waste company where if you have all those single-use plastic bags that you've been collecting in the drawers of your house because we haven't been able to have reusable produce bags, now is the time that you can recycle them. So this is just outside of the customer exit doors, and all kinds of plastic grocery bags are accepted here, and they are shipped to a location where they will be recycled and not go into the landfill. So these are some of the small projects that we have been doing over the past year that we're really glad to be able to offer at the store. And the last thing that I will talk about tonight is Rogue to Go. And I encourage you all to take a minute after this call and type in rogue2go.com on your computer. This is our reusable container program that we offer at the co-op and many other participating eateries throughout Ashland and also in Medford. So we were so excited that in the beginning of 2020, the Oregon Department of Agriculture granted us approval to use this reusable to-go container program. And then the pandemic hit, so it was a little bit of a slow burn as it got started. And you can see here, so far we've sold just under 200 containers in 2020, and our reusable containers have been used at least 329 times just at the Ashland Food Co-op. And right now we are expanding to several other restaurants as well. So if you haven't invested a one-time payment of $10 for a Rogue To Go container, please do so. This for us over the past year has been the one reusable container program that we have been able to continue with success throughout the pandemic. And we're so happy to be able to offer that and to continue to offer that to all of our member owners. And with that, I believe that those are all of my major updates for 2020. And if you have any further questions about things that we're working on, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with any of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rihanna. And I'll remind you once again that if you have any questions specifically about Rihanna's presentation, you can enter them into the chat. So I'd like to invite Julio Dwyer and Camila Long to join us now to share with us what's been happening in the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Ed. For those of you who are joining us, I'm Julio Dwyer. I'm the Vice President of the board. And I would like to echo everything that's been said up to now about how much this last year has been not only a struggle, but also a huge amount of opportunity for us to grow as an organization and to address a lot of issues that we probably hadn't been able to address in the past. And one of them is equity, diversity, and inclusion. More than a year ago, our board in one of our retreats really took a look at where did we want to focus some of our energies, and equity, diversity, and inclusion was one of them. We actually began this process in the fall of 2019 and brought on an equity, diversity, and inclusion consultant, did some across the board cultural agility training for our staff, for entire staff, board managers, as well as all of the staff. And we're poised to really sort of take this on. And then COVID hit. And a lot of our efforts had to shift to dealing with all of the changes that were happening day to day. In addition to that, over the summer, with the death of George Floyd, it became obvious that we as an organization needed to make a stand about where we stood in our community and how we feel about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and really make sure that people understood that. This statement that we acknowledge that the Ashland Food Co-op has not had a culture where all employees and community members have felt safe sharing their experiences of discrimination in our store. We apologize for that. And we are on a learning journey, having reached out for help, listening to our BIPOC employees, the board, and our owners who want to be part of that positive change that we seek. Part of what we've done over this last year is really to try and move this forward in a way that is thoughtful, that where we're really making sure that we're not making any missteps, and where we do, we acknowledge them. So over the past year, some of the things that we've done is to do a real strong look at how do we clarify and then publish what the statement of why we believe Black Lives Matters. There's a full statement that is on our website, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at that. We looked really hard at trying to make sure that we could internalize all of those feelings and all of those thoughts and make it part of this organization. I want to do a shout out to our marketing department, who really took this as an opportunity to create a graphic that says more than just Black Lives Matter, but what that means to us as a co-op, by expressing how much that is about global love, loving locally, community love, and being stronger together. We established an equity, diversity, and inclusion committee that was founded by the board, and that committee is to provide leadership as we work through some of the challenges that we're facing. As I mentioned, we have engaged a professional EDI consultant who continues to work with us, not only with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, but developing an affinity group for our employees and to continue to do training for all of our staff and our board. And that training continues, like I said, and will continue. One of the wonderful things about all of this is also to bring on additional voices into our board. And I have the great honor of introducing Camila Long, who has been with our board for 6 or 8 months now. I can't remember exactly how long. But she came to really help bring a voice to the board that we had not had in the past. And I appreciate her time and her energy. And I'd like to let her talk a little bit more about the direction of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee.
Thank you so much, Julie. And in case you didn't know, Julie was chairing this committee before I joined on to chair the committee. So thank you so much. And she still resides on the committee. As you can see her name, and she's been a great support. So thank you so much for your leadership and being in the room with us, as well as all of the other members, Rihanna being on here, and Emil, and Annie started off with this as well. So thank you so much. I want to say, and Melina, who are on the call right now. So I would just like to say that one of the responsibilities, it was very important for us to talk about some of the responsibilities that we hold as a part of the committee. But I also want to just say it was not just George Floyd, it's Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many. So in the middle of a pandemic, other things were happening in the community. And I would like to thank the co-op for being sensitive enough to do something and say something. It's very difficult living in a place like Oregon and not being able to feel like you're able to do something. And I like to thank the co-op for stepping up, and doing something. And I believe in that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm serving on this committee, to help the co-op and assist, making our community better. So one of the things that we believe in on the one of our responsibilities is, as you see on the slide, if you'll go to the next one, is we research and we discuss and recommend goals and priorities for the organization in the steed of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We also review policies and practices through the lens of equity, and we help investigate some of those and dismantle some of the practice that may conflict with some of our ED&I goals. We also ensure that directors and managers get training or just ensure that the co-op is still doing that, and we support that. And we also advise on practices and policies. We give our input for that, and we also provide, now we're in the process of providing a way for employees to give feedback, dealing with different cultural dynamics and power dynamics that come into play in the organization. And we're here to help respond and support the organization in those matters. So that's what we do at the core of our responsibilities. But right now, like in April, we've been, the last few months, we've been working together to solidify our committee and build some infrastructure that we can trust. And it's taken us a while, and I'm glad that it has. We've doubled up on our meetings. We've been meeting twice a month instead of once a month, like some committees meet, just so we could double down on our efforts and really get focused on what we want to do and how we can contribute. We've been doing that since April. We'll do that again. We'll meet a second time again this month. We just met on Monday, and then we'll go back to our regularly scheduled meetings, but we needed to double down. So this team that's on the committee is very committed to this work, and they also asked to meet more so that we could really dig in and dive in. So you can't ask for a better group of people to be committed in that way for the co-op. And so I think we're doing a great thing. I'd also like to shout out to the BIPOC staff that serves on the committee, and also the affinity group, whose input has been so important for us as we move along. And we often look, engage, and listen to them for to make sure we're going in the right direction as well. One of the things that we also serve as an ally to the affinity group that has been formed in the organization, that's made up, it was made up of BIPOC initially, but now it's opening its doors to include more marginalized people in the community, and all types. I won't say all of the names, but our Pride community, our LGBTQ plus community is joining the affinity group as well. And I like to say that if you would like to attend a meeting right now, you have to be invited to attend those meetings. But in the future, we hope to have those meetings where people can request to come in after we finished. I say we were norming, we were forming, storming, and now we're norming. So now that we're in our norming stage, we will be more open to have people come into those meetings and attend them. And I hope I haven't left anything out, Julie. So I think that's what I have so far, but I'm so excited about the work that this committee is doing. Emil serves on the committee, which the general manager getting in there and tilling the soil with us means everything. And I think you'll see the impact more in the future as well. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Camila, for your service. It's been just so inspirational.
Okay, and now we're going to move to a review of the work that we've been doing that we're really proud of, that we call under the heading of AFC Gives. And Julie's going to present this. I just have to say a little bit about Julie, that she's been really the visionary and the inspiration who has taken what's been a small program that we've followed for quite a number of years and built it into a program with really just a huge impact. So Julie, would you please share with folks what we've been doing in this area?
Thank you so much, Ed. As Ed mentioned, I chair the AFC Gives committee, and this committee really grew out of the opportunity that I saw that one of the strengths that we have as a cooperative is our owners. We have 12,000 owners who are deeply engaged in our community. And I really saw that we weren't tapping into them in a way that could create an avenue for them to help their community. So the AFC Gives has sort of 3 different programs that we focused on in this last year. The first one is called Change for Good. And we're just at the very end of our year 1. And that year we have raised over $80,000 for a variety of different organizations that have gone back into the community. These are funds that are non-designated. In other words, those organizations can use them however they see that they have a need that is unmet, which is really important for nonprofits so that they can function to their best of their ability. We also have continued to do our community grants program, which this last year gave almost $25,000 to projects for nonprofits. And in addition, in response to the devastating Alameda fire, we created a relief for the Rogue Valley and raised over $83,000. So I'd like to go over each one of these programs a little bit so you can get to know them. So the AFC Gives program is our Change for Good is really an opportunity to harness the power of our shoppers. And this project, which allows owners to round up their purchase to the next dollar, benefits different organizations. And each month we have a different organization that you, the owners, get to vote on, which you just did a little while ago. And then the culmination of those donations goes to the organization. Next slide, please. So this year, and I say this year, this is the last slate of Change for Good partners. We raised in August for the Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center over $6,000. September and October, we shifted gears really quickly once the Alameda fire hit, and we raised over $33,000 for the Alameda fire relief. In November, we moved back to the Rogue Farm Corps and they raised over $7,000. December was Maslow Project, and again, another $7,000. January was the Rogue Valley Mentoring with $4,500. February was AHA, which is the Ashland, our advocates for arts for Ashland High, and that was over $4,000. March was North Mountain Nature Center with almost $5,000. April was the Pollinator Project with, again, almost $5,000. May was Rogue Valley Farm to School with $7,000. And up next in this month of June is our family farm. So we're hoping that you please support these organizations and please come in, round up. Once COVID protocols become a little bit more relaxed, we will be having tabling so that these organizations can be out in front and kind of share their mission and their vision with our shoppers as well. As you all know, we just had an election, and part of the election is not only voting for our candidates and our bylaws, but also for our next year of Change for Good partners. And I'm super excited that this year we had 14 organizations that were available, and the top 11 have been selected. And so they are the Maslow Project, Rogue Farm Corps, the Center for Nonprofit Legal Services, let's see, Rogue Valley Farm to School, Community Works, Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, Rogue Climate, KS Wild, the Ashland Food Angels, and Oregons for Helping Residents of Ashland. So we're very excited. These are the 11. Each one of them will be matched with a month based on the number of sales per month and how many votes they got. So please look forward to supporting each one of these organizations in the coming year. The other program that we've done over the, I would say, the last few decades is our community grants program. And this program is really focused on providing a specific amount of money for a specific project within a nonprofit. So each year we set aside a small percentage of our sales, and this amount of money is then given out to the different grantees. They apply, they tell us a little bit about our program, they tell us how it might align with some of our grant categories and priorities, which this last year was food and supportive services, environmental stewardship, and educational programs around food and nutrition. We typically have this program available in the spring, but we have moved it to the fall so that any applicants that were not eligible for Change for Good can also apply now for the community grants. So we'll be looking at awarding some additional grants probably at the end of this year. If you need information about this, please go to our website under AFC Gives. There's information there about how to apply and how to get on a newsletter that will give you information when the applications are available. And some of the organizations that received grants, there were 27 of them this year, included the Ashland Emergency Food Bank, White Oak, Raptor Creek, Southern Oregon University Foundation, Hellman School, the B-Girl, Applegate Neighborhood Network, Ashland Supportive Housing, Medford School District, Cape Junction Farmers Market, Ashland Community Hospital, Armadillo Technical, the Outdoor Discovery Program, the Parker House Project, Cultivate Oregon, Southern Oregon ESD, the Siskiyou Mountain Club, the Culture for Peace Commissions, the Multicultural Association of Southern Oregon, the Bellevue Grange, the HIV Alliance, Options for Homeless Residents of Ashland, Vesper Meadow Education, and Phoenix Counseling. So as you can see, it's a wide range of organizations, and we're really thrilled to be able to support so many of them. Next slide. And as I mentioned, one of the tragedies that affected our community this year, but which I'm so proud of how this co-op showed up to support, was the Alameda fire. So almost within days of the fire, we shifted gears for our Change for Good and asked people to donate their Change for Good for the relief for the Rogue Valley. But in addition to that, we also really wanted to ask owners that if they felt like they wanted to give and they needed an avenue to do that, that we'd be able to provide that for them. So in addition to our Change for Good, a total raised of almost $115,000 that went directly to Alameda fire victims. And when I mean directly, it really literally went cash in hand to the people who were most affected. We did a lot of work on trying to make sure that the organizations that we were giving money to were really turning this over directly to the fire victims as quickly as possible. In addition to the relief for the Rogue Valley, we've also had a partnership with Rogue Food Unites, which is listed here. And that's an amazing organization that has been employing restaurateurs and restaurant staff to provide food to the families that have been left homeless. So it provides food, it uses the organic ingredients and product from our local farms, and then provides food for those who've been unhoused. So it's a really great combination. They've actually expanded their work to go beyond Jackson and now going into Josephine County as well. We continue to collect funds for the relief for the Rogue Valley, and I hope to be able to be part of a celebration this September to memorialize the Alameda fire. And I'd like to just thank everyone, every owner, every staff member for what you've done with this program. It's just really amazing. Thanks.